Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel. Well, it finally happened. After months of debate over whether or not the coronavirus was something that we should take seriously or not, something that we should be concerned about or not, the cards have been overturned, the dice have been rolled, the animal entrails have been read, and the answer is, oh yeah, it's definitely something that we should take seriously. And the world and the United States are going to change because of it. This change has already started to happen. As of this recording, the entire country of Italy has a shutdown, with France and Spain following close behind. Mexico has shut down the Mexican-American border to prevent the coronavirus from going down south. The World Health Organization declared coronavirus to be a pandemic, which is an epidemic that covers a wide swath of territory. And on March 13th, President Trump declared a national state of emergency because of the virus. But because people like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and other popular voices continue to say that there's no difference between the coronavirus and the regular flu, let me just take one moment to say why that's not the case. Several people have argued that more people have actually died from the flu than have died from the coronavirus. And they are correct. From October 1st, 2019 to February 22nd, 2020, the CDC estimates that there have been between 35 to 45 million cases of flu in the United States. And about 18 to 46,000 people have died from it. Contrary-wise, since December of 2019, and again as of this recording, there have been 181,203 confirmed cases of coronavirus globally, and 7,121 people have died from it. So yeah, the flu has killed off way more people than the coronavirus. But here comes the rub. These numbers mean that the flu has a mortality rate of approximately 0.1%. while the coronavirus has a mortality rate of 1%. Meaning that, yeah, even though more people have died from the flu than the virus is still deadlier. The percentages just come out that way. This does not mean that you should panic. Panic never solved anything. But you can't prepare, you can't actually make a plan going forward unless you know the score. Unless you know what is actually going on. You have all the facts. Prudence is what's needed, and sleeping in a hazmat suit or drinking bleach is just as unproductive as declaring proudly that you took 30 extra minutes to eat your meal in a restaurant because, damn it, this is America and you can do whatever the heck you want, global pandemic or no global pandemic. Stock up on food and basic supplies, wash your hands, interact with as few people as possible, common sense stuff. But like I said at the beginning of the video, the coronavirus is going to change the world. Or to put it more conservatively, it has the very strong potential to change the world. Trying to predict the future, it's a really tricky business because, as a wise Jedi Master once said,
difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
But we can look at the board where all the pieces are, and we can pretty safely predict where future conflicts in the US are going to brew because of the coronavirus. One big area of potential change is going to be trade, especially our trade with China. Now, we have what economists called a negative trade agreement with China, meaning that we buy more of their stuff than we sell our stuff to them. But the extent of this negative trade relation might surprise you. In 2018, for example, the US exported $120.3 billion worth of goods to China. In that same year, we imported $539.5 billion worth of Chinese goods. These imports mainly consisted of electrical machinery, $152 billion, regular machinery, $117 billion, furniture and bedding, $35 billion, toys and sports equipment, $27 billion, and plastics, $19 billion. What's even more important though, especially in light of the pandemic, is the fact that we are heavily reliant on China for most of our pharmaceuticals. In 2018, again, for example, we imported 91% of our ibuprofen and 40% of our penicillin from China. Rosemary Gibson and Janardhan Prasad sang in their book, China RX, exposing the risks of America's dependence on China for medicine, revealed that the US is also dependent on China for medicines that are used to combat things like HIV, Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, cancer, depression, and high blood pressure. The authors say that if that trade were stopped, quote, surgeries would be canceled, cancer treatments halted, kidney dialysis rationed, infections would spread.
Oh, it gets better.
Because China just doesn't sell medicine, it is also, quote, the largest global supplier of the active ingredients and chemical building blocks needed to make many prescription drugs, over-the-counter products, and vitamins. So for example, India, who is friendlier to the US than the current Chinese government, and who is also a large exporter of medicines to the US, is dependent on China to receive these active ingredients and chemical building blocks for that medicine. Because the coronavirus started in China, Wuhan to be exact, although pointing that out now is now considered racist. You can listen to the first part of my latest Rolling Stone video to learn all about that, FYI. This has really focused on how one-sided our trade is with China, which has then caused people to say that something needs to be done about that pronto, via sanctions, building and strengthening trade relations with China's competitors, and sticking the World Trade Organization on them. And I agree. Something needs to be done. But that's going to depend a lot on how much brass and steel the American people have. First, because changing our trade habits, it's going to necessitate a price change. There's a reason why we import so much stuff from China. It's because some wizard of smart figured out that it's cheaper to buy stuff from China than to actually make the stuff here ourselves. If we start making products here in America again, or if we even just get new trading partners, we can be guaranteed that prices are going to go up. And nobody likes that. There are other wrinkles as well, which are really illustrated by another fact, that China is the #1 exporter of rare earth elements, things like cerium and neodymium, the things that make our TV screens brighter, make our batteries last longer, and even make our magnets stronger. Now, it's not like rare earth elements are rare like gold or uranium, and that they're only found in China. As James Vincent wrote on The Verge last year, there are actually quite a lot of rare earth elements in Australia, India, Brazil, and even here in the US. In fact, from the 1960s through the 1980s, the majority of the world's supply of rare earth elements was produced right here in the good old USA, from the Mountain Pass mine in California. The reason why we were willing to let the Chinese take over that niche was due to two basic things. First, tightening environmental laws caused rare earth element mines to close. And second, again, it was just cheaper to let the Chinese produce it, and it was easier. Extracting rare earth elements from the rocks that are mined is a dirty, nasty process requiring multiple acidic baths and treatments of radiation. Why jump through all those environmental hoops just to do that grueling, dirty work when China was more than willing to take over? Society pretty much needs rare earth elements now, because not to have them, for that supply from China just to dry up like that, would actually mean moving backwards technologically. James Vincent at The Verge put it like this: if rare earth elements suddenly stopped flowing into the US, everyone would be trading in their iPhones and going back to Blackberries. And no one is going to want to do that. So, just as an example, since we need rare earth elements, and we really want to be free of the one-sided trade relation that we have with China, it follows that we're going to have to start mining for rare earth elements again here at home. But that is going to mean significantly reforming those environmental laws so that we can actually start mining the elements that we need. And what are we going to have to do to get that done? Do we have the willpower and the desire and the drive to actually see that through? Do we even want to see that through? Another area that is ripe for change, as well as conflict, is going to be in education. Again, as of this recording, 9 states have completely canceled K through 12 classes. These include states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, with New York being the latest one. And this isn't just for like a long weekend. The schools in Pennsylvania have been closed for 2 weeks, but some school districts are going even longer. The Long Beach United School District in California has closed all of its schools until April 20th. And because that is a really long time for kids to be out of school, most parents are going to look for alternatives. Now, Kevin Curry at the New American think tank says that this is going to lead to a homeschooling renaissance, as has already happened in Hong Kong. When the schools in that city were closed for 2 whole months, it forced the city to go into an impromptu homeschooling experiment, as was reported in the Wall Street Journal. Confession time? I am practically giddy over this prospect. I'm a product of homeschooling myself, and it's one of the best things that my parents ever did for me. Now, that's not to say that it's not a huge change and a gigantic challenge for parents. It is, no doubt about it. But parents today will be able to benefit from all the tools that the internet can provide for them. Tools that weren't even a twinkle in the eye when I started kindergarten back in 1994. But if homeschooling still makes you a little leery, there are other options, like microschooling, which keeps the freedom and flexibility of homeschooling, but adds in paid teachers for a classroom experience. And parents might decide that homeschooling, microschooling is the way of the future and completely abandon public schooling. It's not as if public schools have actually done a bang-up job of educating kids anyway. Sure, they might know all about Harvey Milk, thanks to LGBTQIA+ history, and why all men are potential rapists, but things like reading, writing, arithmetic? Not a clue. Literally. 65% of 8th graders can't read proficiently. 67% of 8th graders can't do math proficiently. And 50% of all American students don't know who we fought in the American Revolution. And you can't just throw money at the public schools because that's not going to solve the problem. The San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona started a micro school after the public school on the reservation consistently received an F by the Arizona Department of Education. This, in spite of the fact that $17,000 per student per year was spent by that reservation public school, which is 70% above the usual per student per year price tag of $9,000. Even colleges are going to change. As more and more colleges have canceled in-person classes, people have started suggesting that this become the new normal, and that classrooms become digital, building from online degree programs, which have slowly but surely become more and more popular because A, they're cheaper, and B, they're more flexible. And with things now like Zoom and Google Chat, it's easier than ever for a diverse group of people scattered all across the country, or the world for that matter, to meet for a class. There won't be that much of a pushback here on the college level because most people will recognize the benefits of making higher education less expensive and more flexible and more available for people. But there are going to be drawbacks if that actually does become a reality. The arguments, discussions, debates, the camaraderie, the friendships that come about in the cafeteria, the dorm, and the student unions, those are all going to be lost. And with it, an important part of the college experience. Maybe today, if we're honest, the most important part. And speaking of libraries, they're going to start shriveling up. The argument will go like this: if there are no students on campus because there are no in-person classes, then there's no reason to sink money into a building that exists to house books that nobody is using anymore. Which, for a bibliophile like me, would be a Twilight Zone nightmare. But the real pushback is going to come from the move to actually bring school choice to K-12 education. Some states are very nonchalant about homeschooling and don't really make parents jump through a lot of extra hoops if that's what they want to do. Other states, on the other hand, like New York, Illinois, and Georgia, are the exact opposite to varying degrees. The reason being is because ideologues don't want you educating your kids at home. Because if your kids are getting a homeschooling education, i.e. they are, more likely than not, actually receiving an education, then that means those ideologues are not going to be able to indoctrinate your children into the Tao of progressivism. If the coronavirus really does start a rebellion at the K-12 education level, then ideologues are going to do their damnedest to roll that back, to literally force you to send your kids to public school, or to make it so hard and miserable for you to actually homeschool your kids that you will finally give up, raise the white flag, and send them off to the public schools. The standard for that has already kind of been set in Europe. For example, Germany, 2013. 30 police officers and social workers broke into the home of Dirk and Petra Wunderlich with a battering ram and stole their children from them because the Wunderliches had started homeschooling their children, which is actually illegal in Germany. Another example, Britain 2018. The government took steps to force homeschooling parents to register with local authorities and to open up themselves and their homes to inspections. In Germany, this authoritarianism was defended by saying that children needed to be exposed to diversity. In Britain, the argument was that some out-of-school education was not promoting the government's definition of British values. And not to be Johnny Raincloud or anything, but it is so easy for me to see someone like, say, Ilhan Omar or AOC make one of those exact same arguments as to why this potential rebellion against public education has to be nipped in the bud. And a third area of conflict is going to come in the realm of political philosophy itself. The Wall Street Journal ran a story about how China slowed the spread of the coronavirus through quote-unquote unconventional means. Authorities sealed off Wuhan, a city of 11 million, on January 23rd. At least a dozen more lockdowns followed. The party dispatched armies of low-level enforcers to guard the gates of residential compounds and restrict the movements of people living inside. The government tapped data from state-run mobile carriers to track down individuals who slipped lockdowns, recruited volunteers to go door-to-door in apartment buildings to record body temperatures, and enlisted the help of tech companies to develop apps to separate healthy people from those at high risk. China's government had at various points in January and February confined more than 500 million mostly healthy people, more than the combined populations of the US and Mexico, in their homes, according to a conservative Wall Street Journal estimate based on state media reports. And although this flies in the face of the World Health Organization's guidelines, which says that only people who have been exposed to the disease and are displaying symptoms should be isolated, as well as the traditions and liberties of Western countries, some scientists are starting to say that, well, maybe this kind of sort of worked in China? Arthur Reingold, who is an infectious disease doctor at the University of Berkeley, California's School for Public Health, said, quote, "China has proven that if you are draconian enough, if you put enough resources into it, you can actually retard transmissions," unquote. And following Saul Alinsky's rule never to let a good crisis go to waste, the left here in the United States has taken this opportunity to push the Overton window more in their direction and to hopefully, potentially expand their own power. To wit, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City and erstwhile presidential candidate, made the argument that the federal government needs to take over supply chains as part of its coronavirus response. Farhad Manjoo over at the New York Times argued that pandemics and crises like coronavirus show that at heart we're all really socialists. And the pandemic, he went further on to say, has proved the necessity of such things as Medicaid for all and other socialist wet dreams. The mayor of Champaign, Illinois, Deborah Feinen, signed an executive order which gave the local government carte blanche to forbid the sale of firearms, alcohol, food, and gasoline, among other things, all on a whim. It also gave the government the power to shut off the water supply and confiscate private property whenever it wanted to. All in the interests of public safety. Of course. On the flip side, on the right, there are voices tearing their hair out because Los Angeles, which has, as of this recording, 44 confirmed cases of coronavirus, has locked down restaurants, museums, libraries, etc., because apparently this move in a global pandemic is quote-unquote tyrannical. Turning Point USA's Charlie Kirk condemned the cancellation of March Madness because of the pandemic because he argued on Twitter that this was going to dash the dreams of kids. And people like Congressman David Nunes has actively encouraged people to go out to bars, to go out to restaurants. Take the whole family with you. It really doesn't matter. Everything is normal. In other words, both sides are becoming more entrenched in their ideologies. The left for their communist-light authoritarianism, and the right for its atomistic individualism, where you can do whatever you damn well want to because freedom and America. And because no one wants to talk about the common good, the left because it's too restrictive, and the right because it's too controlling, both sides are going to clash even harder than ever because there is no hope even for any sort of a compromise. Furthermore, it's going to become harder to reform or revise either side because any sort of giveaway is going to be seen by them to be a surrender to the other side. This is going to exacerbate the cold civil war that we've really been in for the last 10 years, and it's going to make it more likely that that cold civil war is going to heat up, as if we weren't close enough to that eventuality anyway. There's a line towards the end of the musical 1776 where John Hancock says this.
We are about to brave the storm in a skiff made of paper. And how it shall end, God only knows.
The coronavirus is one of the storms of our time, and how it will end, God only knows. Do what the Boy Scouts do. Don't panic, stay calm, but be prepared for anything. But what say you? What else is going to change, or potentially will change, because of the coronavirus? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment box below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. Before you go, make sure to give the video a like and share it with your friends on social media. And if you liked the video, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications so that you will always know when I post new videos about the culture, politics, and religion from a unique point of view. Thank you for watching. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your day. Take care. Don't panic. And I will see you all next time. Ciao.